I know that I should cover the other party's stances on Brexit, and I plan to get round to all of those, but it's been a really fiery and tumultuous week for Labour. So let's go through it. It started on Sunday when Jeremy Corbyn was on the Marr show, and he said something that really triggered me and plenty of others, which was about the single market, and he said it depends on EU membership. Now, for me, that is outright false, and for many others, it is outright false. And I've seen people try to argue that he was really saying that the two were so integrated, or when you leave the one, you leave the other. But in terms of the language that he used, he gave the extremely strong impression that you could not possibly be outside the EU and also still in the single market, which of course is false because you've got all of the EEA countries that do that. What the deals are associated with that is a different question, but I think that he fundamentally misrepresented the landscape. And this irritated me a lot because I felt that he didn't need to do that. As you've seen in my videos before, I have at times defended him and said, look at the position that he's in, whereby he can't really move until the wider public move because that would lose his advantage. And when I went to Bristol and gave a talk there, I described his position as a man who is sort of Brexit indifferent or Brexit irritated, surrounded by a pro-Brexit Praetorian Guard in a wildly anti-Brexit party, which is becoming more so, looking to pick up votes from a population which is both pro-Brexit and anti-Brexit and getting jaded with the whole thing. So that's why he's in a bind. But I think he went too far with that. To explain a little more why, to make excuses for Jeremy Corbyn a little more, actually, as far as he's concerned, I am sure one kipper is worth many of us Remainers, because Labour, especially old Labour, is anchored in its old identity of working class and north and angry, and he does not want to give that up, and he's prepared to cast aside many of us southern metropolitan passionate Labour Remainers in order to keep a hold on that. So that is his bind, but he should be representing the situation fairly to the British people, and I don't believe that he did then. But then it seems as though Corbyn got Barry Gardiner, his shadow trade secretary, to write a piece in The Guardian that was effectively the full UKIP. It really was out there. It was, we need to control our borders, we can't pay a penny in, we have to be completely outside the European Court of Justice and the customs union, and anything less than that would make the 52% feel like it was a con. And he even said that, for example, Norway's situation is a vassal state of the EU, and I haven't heard anyone else use that kind of description. And it drew praise from Breitbart, and it drew praise from Nigel Farage, but then it drew a real pushback on social media, but also by articles by Heidi Alexander and Polly Toynbee, and they really took Barry Gardiner's piece apart. And so then, after that, you saw something interesting. There was an article in the Mirror that reported that Corbyn's campaign chief had said, Labour may change its stance on Brexit if the public mood shifts. And I think that is a watershed moment. I think that's a complete game changer, because then that puts the power back in the hands of those that want to argue Remain, to argue that to the people, and Labour is saying that they can move if that's what they see, because then the will of the people is changing. Now, I've heard some people say Labour should be leading, showing leadership and showing opposition rather than just chasing the vote. But in terms of capturing that turn in mood and having that legitimacy associated with the will of the people, especially the working class vote, as they start to see what Brexit's got lined up for them, if that turns and Labour follows, then Labour can lead. Now, is that sentiment echoed by Corbyn and McDonnell, who are the two people actually controlling Labour's position? And they're starting to say that as well, but not quite in those terms, but saying that all options should remain on the table, which is exactly right. So I do think that That stance by Labour is now beginning to crack from internal pressure and also seeing the landscape ahead. And I think that that is a good and healthy thing. And it's now up to us that passionately believe in retaining as much of Europe as possible, or even that exit to Brexit because we don't like what's coming up. We can go and argue that directly to the Labour base and the rest of the population, knowing that Labour are certainly considering moving their official opinion on that basis. And I think, to come back to what I was saying before, where we really need to target that is up north and with the working class and with abandoned communities and all of these communities that have been gutted by globalization and neoliberalism and now are being sold offers of doing trade deals with Trump that will undercut their communities and their farms even more. That needs to be made clear to them. Change needs to be seen there, but it can't just be a case of you were wrong and this is going to hurt you, so fight back against it. We really do need to have a more positive vision about how all of this is going to get fixed and healed going forward. What are the solutions for Europe? Why should we have that solidarity? What are the changes going on in Europe that now can make a difference, so that they weren't wrong to shake up the system at the time because the system needed shaking up. But now that it's being shaken up, Brexit is not the answer, and we know we've got to deal with other answers. And I think that is the right way to go forward. Little addendum, I found it extraordinary in Barry Gardiner's piece, and it's said by some others, that the 52% voted for this, that and the other, and they list off their own wish list as to what the 52% voted for. The 52% didn't vanish and die on the 24th, leaving this as their last will and legacy. They're still around, most of them. They still exist. You can actually go and poll them directly. And when you do, you often find that their opinions on all the different choices that we have now are a lot more nuanced. And I even know some leading Brexiteers that have far more sophisticated positions on some of these questions than is often given credit.